Hey everyone, a little later than normal today because we're doing a quick meal tonight. So we're gonna do kind of an Asian take on beef and mushrooms with rice, a salad with a ginger and carrot dressing that we'll make. Definitely do not do this normally, so I'll be just kind of tinkering around here in the kitchen. This is that house arrest game. Sometimes I'll play Chopped at home when I get home late and just look for what we have in the fridge. It's kind of what I did here. Saw what we have in the fridge and I'm trying to piece something together and hopefully make something good. We'll see if it works. So right now we don't have a wok here, not an Asian food expert by any means, but the idea is to show you how easy it can be. So I'm using my cast iron skillet. I already have it warming. I only have it on just a little bit above low. I don't want a cold pan for this because I want to get a good sear on the steak that I'm doing. I have some petite sirloin that I've thrown in the freezer, and I'll show you that in a minute. I have water that's coming up to a boil. For good Asian rice, I'm fine with just using long grain rice. That Mahatma stuff is kind of the normal. So we're looking for grains. I mean, these aren't as long as I've seen, so it's not kind of that extra long grain, but they'll work. They'll work just fine. So I have 3 cups of water. That'll mean 1.5 cups of rice. Always go 2-to-1 water to rice when you're doing a simple white rice. You can always tinker at the end if you feel that your rice is too dry or too sticky. You can always take the lid off, do things like that. So I'm just gonna measure out, and you don't have to use measuring cups. If you just have like a regular glass, you can fill a glass with rice and then just put 2 glasses of water in it. So there's 1, and then we're gonna go to the little half cup. I actually have a little thing in here. So I'll do that and make a half cup. So maybe a little bit much because it's normally about a 1/4 cup of dry rice per person in a family is enough. So I'm doing about 1.5 cups. That would be enough for 6 people with those measurements in mind. I'm gonna put the lid off a little bit to the side because I wanna hear it boil. At the point that it boils, I'll turn it down to simmer. So that's all I have for that here. Rice is in and going. So at this point, I'm going to pull the meat out and get that prepared. So it's been in the freezer for about half an hour. So I don't want it like rock hard frozen. So this is something I got a couple of days ago at the store. It was petite sirloins. Look at that. That's crazy. Only $5 for all this. So there's not, I mean, petite sirloin isn't something that I would normally pick for like grilling because there's not a lot of fat, a lot of flavor, and it's, so New York is great for flavor. Ribeye is good for that fatty flavor. Grabbing my sharp knife here. So these, if you ever want to spoil yourself, these guys do a really nice job with their steel. American made, if you're a fan of that. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna bring this down so you can see what we're doing here. Done with the rice, so that can go here. So all we have is some petite sirloins. I'm going to take a few of them. And unlike you'll find in like Asian food where I want it sliced super, super thin, I'm actually trying to get a little bit of texture here. So this is probably what I'll take. It might be a little bit overkill, but that's okay. So it's just kind of a little firmer than would normally be, which is great. It's kind of what I want. So I'm gonna start at the smallest end. You can already see how thin it is down here. Let me see if I can bring this down to you. So I'm gonna slice at an angle here at the bottom, just so I'm getting a few flat pieces. These are gonna cook super quick though. So I want to go out at the other angle. So I'll have a pointy edge at one end and I'll have a little bit of meat in the middle. So I'm gonna try and cook these just a little bit past medium rare. The ends will get nice and crispy and well done like you'd find in a lot of Chinese cooking. So it's kind of what I'll call a morph of 2. So each cut, I'm gonna go back and forth I'm not going to cut them all the same way because I'm trying to get different shape and texture with them. And this is why I had that pot over here, not all the way on. I just heard it boil, turning it down to low, and that's there. So this shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes to cut all of this meat. I'm going to cut off the rest of this little bit of fat here so it's out of the way. So I'm still going back and forth. So once away, once toward, once away. So I'm making strips here, but I'm making them with a little bit of shape and texture and some surface area. And getting in that hot pan, it'll be that much more that we'll be able to touch the soy and ginger and whatever other flavors I decide to put in there. All right, so we found a funny spot here. So I found a piece of gristle here. Because I'm cooking it to medium rare, I'm not slow cooking it, I'm actually gonna take that out and remove it, since I don't want to chew on that. I don't know about you. So each cut, and now actually you can see we've run into a huge piece right here. So I'm going to try and find out where that's starting. It looks like it's starting here, running down, and running all the way through. So I'm going to flip it around, cut that little piece of fat off, and do the same thing where I go away and toward until I run back into this gristle. And then what I may do is just not use it at all, because it seems like there's a pretty good amount. Let's see where we are here. So here, because I have that gristle underneath, I'm just going to go in one direction and try and cut away from the gristle. You can actually see it's running pretty far through all of this right here. So I'm going to do the one on this side, kind of cutting away from that gristle. And then I'm going to put that over here, since I have plenty of usable meat right here. Same thing here. I mean, there's a reason this stuff is $2.77 a pound or whatever it was. It's not all going to be usable. Kind of like you find those tri-tips on sale, but they're not trimmed. So I'm doing a lot of this trimming work here that maybe a good butcher that's going to charge 3 times that would do for you. So now I have a workable piece, back and forth. Super simple as long as you remember the order you're going in. Making almost like pyramid shaped cuts here. And what will happen, unlike going straight down, is I'm getting an extra spot to be able to get to that. So this corner here, this corner here, will get a little bit more cooked, and it'll save just a little bit in the middle. So I'm looking for both flavor and texture here. That looks pretty good. I have a piece of fat here I'm going to avoid, so I'm just going to cut one more here and move that off to the side. So I have the same thing here, some fat. So I'm going to cut this right off. Just remember, when you're working with this type of meat, you don't need to use every single piece. You're kind of trying to go through and look for your favorites that you'd want to eat, and that's what you want to serve to your guests or your family. So we're just about done here. Once this happens, I'm going to cook this a little separately, which is completely different than you'd find in like a Chinese restaurant, where they have a big wok going at probably 750 degrees, and they throw everything in there once, and they throw the sauce on. Here I want to control the temperature that everything's cooked to. I don't want the steak to get overcooked. I don't want the mushrooms to get overcooked. I'm going to throw some asparagus in the pan as well. I don't want that to turn into mush. I'll probably let the onions sit in there the longest amount of time. All right, so here I have little vein running right through. Not a vein, it's a piece of gristle. So I'm gonna cut around that by going sideways here. Make sure your knife is sharp for this. You don't want to work with something that's too dull, especially with protein like this. All right, so that's that. I'm going to take this meat, I'm going to set it into a bowl. It's off to the side here. I'm going to discard this and I'm done with the meat. Simple as that. So I know that rice is going to take probably, let's see here. I'm going to actually move this rice to move the rice to another burner, probably back here that I can get it even lower because I don't want to scorch the bottom. So I'll turn that off. At this point, I'm going to turn my cast iron up just a bit. So you'll see, all right, I have some cucumber here, I have some carrots here. First thing I'm going to do is make a dressing. Let's bring this up. Hey, Larry. All right, so I have a Vitamix blender right here. I'm going to make a dressing using this guy. So I'm going to take these carrots that I've chopped and throw them right in. We're going to do kind of a carrot ginger dressing. We had some carrots. I have some ground ginger. If you have fresh ginger, that's great too. You want to pour some of that in. So I'm going to take this top off and really go liberal with it. Because I want the carrot and the ginger to be the flavors that stand out the most. Now remember, dried ginger, you have to use a lot less than you would fresh ginger because it will actually open up as liquid hits it. So let's hit it with some liquid. So I'm going to found some rice vinegar. We obviously use it all the time. It's never been opened. Who knows? How old is this stuff? I don't think it ever goes bad, but oh, here it is. Hey, best if used by 2020, so we're golden. Oh, yep, it hasn't even been unsealed. So here's our first shot at rice vinegar in the Morrison house. I'm gonna just dump some in. I'm gonna dump the amount of olive oil that I would think is about the same as the vinegar. If you were measuring it out, I would say maybe for the couple of carrots, maybe a half a cup of each would be good. I'm going to add a touch of honey for some sweetness. Get it down there, and then I'll finish it off with some salt. On this, I'm probably not going to put pepper into it because I really want the ginger to be the flavor that stands out and not make it too peppery. So some honey in here. And I'm going to guess that that's good. Let's call that a teaspoon. And last thing, a little bit of salt. Probably 2 pinches, we'll call that maybe 2 teaspoons. So here we go, it's gonna be loud. Turn your volume down for the next minute or so. Alright, so there we go. Let's see how this tastes. At this point, I'll adjust as I feel necessary. Smell the rice vinegar, which is great. The ginger's not standing out as much as I would like to, so I'm actually just going to Sprinkle a little bit more in here. Texturally, it's kind of vinegar heavy, so I'm going to put a little bit more honey for sweetness. So there goes that honey. And then if I want to thicken it up, the way I'm going to do that is actually by adding the oil, and I may do that because that oil is going to, as it spins, turn into almost like a mayonnaise. I mean, not quite that heavy, but the little bit of sugar in that honey and the oil will work together with the vinegar and turn it into that. If you think about mayonnaise, when you have the eggs and that fat with the oil, and then as soon as you add in a little bit of lemon juice, it starts to coagulate. So we're looking for this good emulsification here. And at this point, I'm going to leave it here on medium for about the next 30 seconds. While that's happening, I have this pan up to high. I know the rice probably has 10 minutes. I'm going to prepare the salad. So I already have some romaine and radicchio in a bowl, a few tomatoes as well. So now with the cucumber, I'll just do a simple chop with the cucumber. So this will go right into my salad bowl, and I'll bring this back so we can get everything else ready. All right, let's try this out. So we're gonna bring this dressing over to you so you can see it. It's kind of that consistency we're looking for. And it tastes incredible. I get the carrot, that rice is standing out from the rice vinegar, the ginger's there. I may add a little bit of salt at the end, but I'm gonna let it sit there for a little bit and see what it does. But it's turned out really good. All right, now we move on to our main. So I have some cremini mushrooms that are gonna go in here. I have some asparagus that's going to go in there. And then I'll have some onions as well. So this asparagus is probably right near the end of its life, which is why I thought it would be good in here. So as the asparagus starts to get a little soft, you cook it at a high heat and it's going to taste really incredible. So I'm going to cut it right to about here, and we'll have some asparagus spears like this, and then I'll take about this much of the stem, and then the rest of this is going to get thrown out. All these roots down here that get dry and fibrous. So here we go. A little bit of sesame oil is going to go into the pan. We have toasted sesame oil. If you don't have that, you could use peanut oil. If you don't have that, you can use canola oil. That's no problem. So the sesame oil goes in the pan. First thing I'm going to do is the asparagus. I have it cranking on high heat right now. We're going to get some sizzle here as this asparagus goes in. It's only going to stay in a couple of minutes. I'll stir it around and I'll pull it right out. So using a cast iron pan, I'm going to be able to evenly heat it, which is why I like the cast iron so much. It takes that flame and disperses it all around really nicely. I'm not going to season it with anything yet at this point. That'll be all at the end. So this is just really quick, probably about another minute, and then it will come out. So asparagus is going. Next thing I'm going to put in is the beef. After that, I'm going to put the mushrooms right into where the beef was cooking because it'll pick up all that flavor. Sorry, I'll put the onions in before the mushrooms, and then I'll put the mushrooms in last. But I'm going to cook the four separately, keep them separate, and then I'll join them together at the end, and then we'll sauce in the flavor component that we want to work with tonight. So that's about it for the asparagus. That's going to go right here in this bowl. I'm smelling that sesame oil, which is fantastic. I'm going to turn this down a little bit since it's smoking. So here's our asparagus right there and done. It's going to go off to the side. Next thing we're going to do is put the beef in. One thing I don't like doing is cooking with unseasoned beef, so I am going to salt it just a little bit. Not going to salt it like normal because we're going to be putting soy sauce into this, and that's pretty salty. So that's going to go in. Salt the rest of it. I spread it out a little bit, and then this is really cold beef, remember. I had some sesame oil still in the pan with the asparagus. I'm going to add just a little bit more. And on this, we're keeping the flavors super simple. Just salt, sesame oil, and beef so far. That'll sit here just a couple minutes while that is going. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be about 4 or 5 minutes total. The things we wanna make sure that we're doing are creating balance, no matter what cuisine we're trying to make. So we wanna have some fat, some acid, some umami is great, some salt, and a little bit of heat if we feel it, we desire it. So today when we're doing this, like I said, I don't normally make Asian at home. I'm going to be using soy sauce. I am going to be using toasted sesame seeds at the end because those are kind of traditional components. I may throw some ginger in if we feel it's necessary, but I'm also gonna throw some sort of acid because we wanna make sure that we create that balance. So no matter what you're doing, as long as it has balance, you're probably gonna get away with it. And that goes for whatever ingredients you have in the house. So just make sure you have some fat and some acid in there, some salt, and everyone's gonna be happy. All right, so back to our cutting board. That beef is in here, the rice is back there, the asparagus is sitting, resting. So I'm gonna cut these mushrooms up somewhat small. I want them to cook quickly, and I don't want them to become spongy. So I'm looking for more surface area, more texture, almost maybe a little crispiness. Let's get that guy. Almost done with these mushrooms. I'm about to stir that beef up so that we're covering it on all sides. If it becomes a little liquidy in the pan, you can always pour some of the liquid off, but as it cooks, especially at high heat, a lot of the liquid will burn off on its own. All right, there's our mushrooms. They will sit right here. There we go. I'm not trying to over salt the meat, so I'm probably not even going to taste it at this point. I'm just looking for browning on all sides, and I want to keep this pan as hot as possible. Okay, while this is going, my internal clock is telling me to check on the rice. Do that right now, and look at that. My internal clock, I believe, was right. Oh, yes, it was. So it is fantastic. That is perfectly done. I'm going to take the heat off. I'm going to leave the lid on so it doesn't dry out, and it'll just sit right there, no problem. Okay, so there's that. Here's our mushrooms. They're prepared and ready. I'm going to move them over here. A little bit of red onion. Probably not going to go crazy with the red onion. I have about a half of one right here. So I'm going to leave this tail on. I'm going to go down in half. And then here I probably want some strips tonight as opposed to dicing it. I'm going to pull off this outer layer. And all I want to do is try and make it pretty even. So I'm going to go down somewhat carefully. So with balance in mind, we want to have these, each time you bite into an onion, you don't want it to be a mouthful of onion. You want it to be somewhat balanced. So there's some of them. Alright, so beef is brown. I don't want to overcook it, so at this point I'm going to pull it out, rinse this bowl out, be right back. I'm going to keep the heat on high. I'm keeping the liquid in the pan. I want these brown bits in here. I'm going to pour just a little bit more sesame oil into the pan. Let that sesame oil heat up for about 15 seconds or so, and then the onions will go in. We'll cook the onions. I'll add the onions directly in with the asparagus after they're cooked, and then we'll do the mushrooms, add that in, and then we'll place everything together and we'll be done. I'm going to make sure I'm moving these onions all around the pan. I want to scrape up the brown bits that were left from the meat and get that flavor into the onions. I'm trying not to make them soggy. I want definitely more of a saute. Don't want it to soak up too much of this sesame oil that I have in it. Maybe another minute here on the onions, then I'll bring those mushrooms back. So it's really a simple dish. It's just beef, onions, asparagus, mushrooms, and then whatever flavors. Like I said, I think we're going to do soy sauce, maybe a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of the sesame oil, and then whatever else comes to us as we're tasting. So maybe a little bit of ginger. Just kind of going in what I would consider Asian flavors. You can use fresh garlic, you can use garlic powder. I'm going to end up using some of the, since we have them, some of this store-bought minced garlic. Just because, why not use it? We have it. All right, onions are just about done. I don't want them overcooked. They're going to cook once again, and they're going to continue steaming here as the mushrooms cook. So they're going right in with the asparagus at this point. This pan you can see is heating back up. Since I'm taking all of the components out, I'm gonna get this mushroom in pretty quickly. Just a little bit more sesame oil. And here we go. You might say, oh wow, that's a ton of mushrooms compared to everything else. Well, they're gonna shrink down. So if you saw me do mushrooms the other night with the Italian dish, you saw that it soaked up a lot of the oil. What I don't want to do at this point is overwhelm us with sesame. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of olive oil and finish them. You can use canola oil, no problem. But I just don't want it to be all about sesame. I want to balance out those flavors. Otherwise you get a little overwhelmed. So once again, no seasoning. The only thing I've seasoned so far is that steak because it helps bring the flavor to the exterior of the steak when you salt it. Everything else I'm waiting until the end. At the very end, all we're doing is basically rewarming everything and trying to get the flavors to come together with whatever sauce we decide on. So I'm getting these mushrooms sauteed. I don't want them overcooked. I'm going to keep moving them around. And if you're just joining us, yeah, I definitely do not do Asian food very often, if ever, at home. We were just looking through the pantry and saw that we had the stuff, and why not? All right, so the mushrooms are good. I know that this was the last thing going in, so I'm going to bring that beef right back into the cast iron, as well as the other veggies. Everything is now in. I'll show you what this looks like. Super simple. I'm going to add in soy sauce directly to it. And guess what? I just ran out of soy sauce, so I may end up salting it a little bit more. I'm going to get some brown sugar. What do we have? Let's try it. Where is that? Okay. I'm adding brown sugar directly to the pan. Not too much, but just enough so that it caramelizes. So I'm going to use a combination of wooden spoon and tongs here to move everything around. If I want to, what I didn't do here with the meat, if I wanted to make the meat a little crispier, I could have added cornstarch when I was doing it. I chose not to because I want a little more chew on the meat. Maybe that a little more Americanized. So that heat's still cranking on high. Have everything moving in here. At this point, I'm going to add some of the garlic. Notice I'm waiting until almost the end to do this because I don't want the garlic to burn because that pan is extremely hot. So what I'd consider maybe 2 cloves of garlic in here. It's going to go in here now. I'll stir this around. At this point, I'll taste it, see where the sodium level is, and see if I want to add any chili flake or ginger or anything else. I'm going to add something else into it. Let's see. Erin, what'd you say there was? I have no idea where that is. I'm going to add a little bit of white wine and some salt. See what happens. It's just kind of speaking to me. The soy sauce is definitely there. I wouldn't mind a little bit of ginger. I'm gonna add more salt since I didn't have a ton of soy sauce. So it's just kind of working with what you have sometimes, right? So let's go a little ginger. I don't want to overwhelm it with ginger, especially since it's going to be that component in the salad, but I wouldn't mind a little hint. And ooh, it smells really good. Let me show this to you. This looks really great. I wish you could smell it. Just get some of this aroma here, because seriously, the ginger and the onion and the garlic and the brown sugar and oh my goodness, it smells really good. All right, I am just about done. So this, if you saw, this is why I didn't want to overcook anything, because this has been sitting in here for just a little bit. I'm gonna take out a small piece of meat, try it out, and see if I like our flavors. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, oh my gosh. I think that white wine really added a little bit of body. This is absolutely delicious. I'm really excited about it. All right, so plating time. Let's do it. Hi everyone. Let's see. I haven't even looked to see if there's been any questions. Just a bunch of people watching. Hi, hi, hi. Hi everyone. All right, cool. So now we have the rice. It's been sitting here. It is perfect. Here's that rice. Remember, it's 1.5 cups of rice, 3 cups of water. That is it. I added no salt to it. I added nothing else to it. I didn't let the rice cook off in the pan. I added it straight to the boiling water. And that's what gives it this fluffy character. There's the rice, and we're going to spoon some of this awesome beef, mushrooms, asparagus, onions, garlic, ginger, soy sauce, brown sugar. This looks fantastic. And there we have it. You can always spice it up with red chili flake, any kind of hot sauce, but I hope you enjoy.